Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session today. We're going to be talking to you about unified platforms, how to streamline your startup and submission, specifically for expedited vaccine trials. I'm Heather DiFruscia. I'm the Associate Director of Randomization and Trial Supply Management here at Axiom Real-Time Metrics, and I'm speaking to you today with Spencer.
Hey everyone, Spencer Buck, Project Director here at Axiom. Excited to take you through some of this content in some more detail today.
So here at Axiom, we have our proprietary software, Fusion eClinical Suite. It is a unified platform with everything from EDC, data management, of course, RTSM, as well as CTMS and ePro, and the services to support that. But we're going to be talking to you about vaccine trials, specifically expedited vaccine trials. And Spencer, how about you take it away with some background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we all know that with some of these vaccine trials, we have to get our activities up and running very quickly, just due to the nature of some of these. So we're going to be taking you through how we can do that with a unified solution through our various stages, being startup, patient treatment and follow-up, and then eventual closeout and analysis activities. So obviously lots of ongoing and moving parts with our startup phase, getting not only our database from a CTMS and EDC perspective up and running, but getting our sites activated as well. Getting into our patient treatment, again, we'll get you through some more of these details, but making sure that all the parties are working together, making sure that you have unified access to all the information that you're going to need to really streamline your trial throughout its life cycle. Yeah, so let's jump into some of the key solutions here and kind of get into some of our highlights. So we're going to be getting into the details of the startup phase, as I mentioned, patient treatment and follow-up, and closeout analysis, our three main buckets that we look to streamline. So just touching on startup a little bit here. So as we all know, it's difficult to get your trial started up in an expedited manner when we have all these moving parts. These moving parts could be from various vendors to various technology solutions, and making sure that you have all the appropriate oversight and management throughout that startup. So kind of under the big bucket here, we've kind of delineated some key categories, being our essential documentation, getting all the regulatory document collection and submission for the startup and activation of our clinical sites. And with that and all those activities, we do have to get our appropriate CTMS database activated, as well as your EDC database activated. And I think we all know the challenges that come with all of those, especially if you are working with multiple vendors and multiple teams. It's tough to coordinate those activities. It's tough to have appropriate oversight of those activities. So we're going to be talking through some of the benefits of a unified platform, helping you streamline those, helping you have a single solution where you can see how the progress of all those is going, and really making sure that we hit milestones getting these sites activated. So again, under our CTMS, we do have some of the activities that are going to be required with that, as well as EDC. But again, we're going to be getting through some of these in more detail. Yeah, perfect. So in terms of the startup activities here, and as we all know, this is not a comprehensive list, but again, we've kind of outlined some of the activities involved from the identification of your site all the way through to first patient in. So as we can see here on screen, depending on the requirements of the trial, there's lots of activities. There's lots of touch points as to which we have to hit if we're going to be making these happen for our go live dates. And it's really, really crucial that we maintain the maintenance of your oversight and you have good communication between your teams. So this is where a unified platform can really, really be a powerful tool here. If you're managing all your CTMS activation of your site components within the same database as your EDC and potentially ePro, you know the activity and the status of all these within a single sign-on. You can log into that unified platform. You can see how your startup activities are going, how your essential document collection is progressing and how your IRB submissions and your regulatory documentation is tracking as well. Within that unified platform, you also see how your database is progressing through its build. And then you have obviously the appropriate statuses from all your applicable parties, as well as any training requirements. Heather, do you want to talk about the crucial components of CTM tracking and IP requirements here as well?
Absolutely. And I know that IP shipment and receipt, we have that kind of at the end of our line, just before go live around the SIV. However, there's so many different parts that need to happen just to get us there. So it's really key that we're getting the right parties together. So identifying who's going to be participating, or those key leads from the depots, from the suppliers, making sure we have all the information about lead times, shipment schedules, what are the requirements for shipping and storage when it comes to temperature, and we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. It's essential we have all of these pieces identified. Often when we're talking about specifically expediting vaccine trials, and we're also looking at components, not necessarily a finalized vaccine, it requires preparation. So in those cases, then there's additional pieces that we need to track. So we really need to define what those pieces are, what the requirements are, and make sure that we can get that on site for the SIV and for that activation and initial dosing.
Yeah, so in terms of kind of coming out of that startup phase, so we've hit all our milestones, we've got our site activated, and now we're transitioning into our enrollment stage. So as we know, with these vaccine trials, we're looking to enroll as quickly as possible. Similar to most of your clinical trials, but especially with a vaccine, just because there is usually that patient population out there that's available to be enrolled onto your study. So it's very crucial that we're staying on top of enrollment from a tracking metric perspective. So again, with a unified platform, when you have your CTMS speaking to your EDC at all times, you're going to be able to track this appropriately, looking at your enrollment from a planned, an actual, and a projected perspective. And then if we move to the next slide here, from a corrected perspective, let's say we were able to look at all of our sites cohesively, seeing where we might be falling behind a little bit, and put the appropriate corrective actions in place so we can still meet our end goal. I'm sure we all know that it is not going to go exactly as planned from the beginning, but as long as we can identify those risks early, be proactive about them, and put the appropriate corrective actions in place with these appropriate metrics, that end goal is obviously still achievable from an enrollment perspective. Heather, anything to add to that?
Well, specifically when we're talking about the enrollment rate, then being able to visualize is key. And part of that is also being able to tie that into all of your other pieces. So whether your enrollment rate is on track or not, then you want to make sure that your inventory availability is in alignment. We want to be aware of what our inventory as a whole we have to work with, and adjust our resupply rates and the buffer at site based on if we have a high enrolling site. So we always make sure we have sufficient inventory available.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many underlying details that can be inferred from our enrollment. As you mentioned, inventory, data entry, ePro devices, if you're supplying devices for a particular study, et cetera. So the list goes on and on. I think we can cut it off there and just keep the ball rolling here.
Yeah, so, and you gave us a great segue there talking about ePro devices, because our next item is talking about ePro. So ePro has a couple different responsibilities in this case. So one is helpful reminders, so specifically around compliance, and this is tied to making sure that they're reporting as expected. So having dynamic windows based on the date of vaccination. And of course, depending on your randomization schedule and your different treatment arms, you might even have different visit schedules as well. We also want to make sure that the patients are aware of their upcoming visits. So again, just that visibility and awareness, as well as when we're talking about compliance, those late or missing entries. So really staying on top of them so that they can continue to be compliant, and that also takes away some of the burden from your sites, as the sites would be following up alternatively. Additionally, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I apologize, Heather. That's a great point. ePro can be a very powerful tool for other components outside of just data capture. So obviously one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. But on that note, we're going to talk about the data capture aspect of it. So here, when we're talking about vaccine trials, then it can be for ongoing or new symptoms that we want to be monitoring, specifically, of course, injection site reactions and adverse events, and then really being able to streamline the support and identification of any additional investigator assessments required. And so this information is available in real time. We're not talking about a paper diary that it gets reviewed at a later date. There's the ability for the PI and the site to identify that there's maybe we need to get on a phone call, and there needs to be some additional support or treatment. Anything else there, Spencer?
No, that was great.
Okay, so continuing on, so still talking about treatment, specifically more so on the IP side, but also some blinding aspects. So as we noted, we're looking at, when we're talking about expedited vaccines, we're looking at shipping at the component level often. So that also means that your inventory is going to be unblinded and often bulk. And so that means that you need to have a set of unblinded staff. And here we're talking about the unblinded pharmacy staff, but that also applies across the board. You need to have a designated unblinded personnel for oversight, whether it's unblinded monitoring, unblinded QA activities, which we'll get into in a moment. Also, the dose preparation, as I noted, is being completed by the unblinded pharmacy. We're not just pulling something and providing it to the coordinator. There's a certain level of prep required. And of course, that is based on your pharmacy manual, and there can be certain calculations that need to be completed. So what can we do to kind of support that? When we're talking about the IP specifically, then again, expedited means that we often don't have the stability data that we usually would have. So we have limited information there, as well as we're working with shipping and storage temperature requirements that often are quite low. So we're talking about cold chains. So there's lots of complexities that you can see here on the blinding and the IP side. So just starting, when we're talking about the solution here and what you can be looking for in your vendors and your technology, is randomization and trial supply management. So having those pieces automated. Really, you want to be always in the back of your mind thinking about those blinding requirements. So you might, of course, the unblinded pharmacy, they need to know what the treatment is, what unblinded treatment assignment, so then they can prepare the dose accordingly. And so in that case, we do often recommend that all of the key parties are notified, but we do that in a blinded manner. And that means that we're kind of mitigating some of that potential risk of someone kind of forwarding an email incorrectly to the wrong personnel. And instead, having the unblinded pharmacist log in and generate a report, and that gives them all the details. And it's not just what treatment the subject's on, but also dosing details, any of the prep required, what number of files or what IP, the different components that need to be pulled from inventory for prep. So it's really ideally taking some of that calculation and some of the manual aspects out of it, so they can just go through and confirm that yes, this aligns with what our calculations are. So it's an extra verification and in real time. Here you can also see the report can also act as an automated source document. So it's not just telling them the information, it's also allowing them to enter their notes in there as well. So they have the information, they don't need to transcribe it, and then they're confirming that yes, they checked the quantity of inventory as required. That can then be reviewed either by a scan for a remote review by the unblinded monitor or when the unblinded monitor is on site. So more specifically on the inventory side, so having everything in one place in that unified platform means that you also have your global tracking and awareness of your inventory. That's through notifications and reports, which we already talked about a little bit on the randomization side just a moment ago, but also being able to account for and track that the temperature component like we talked about before. So making sure you can build in those flexible quarantine management workflows. Often what happens is that there's a whole separate team that you need to bring together so then you can complete the fit for use determinations. But in this case, you can not only have the real-time notifications so all the parties are aware, but also be able to capture that information and the results of the fit for use determination directly in your system. So again, once that's confirmed as approved for use or so fit for use or needs to be quarantined, then the sites are aware, all parties are aware. From there, you can have the appropriate inventory resupplies shipped out. And that's not just in these temperature excursion scenarios, but also just in general. It's really important to have that automated review where you can be able to have flexibility in setting your buffers, as I noted before, so you're always making sure you have the right inventory on site for dosing. Spencer?
All right, perfect. So as we transition through the enrollment kind of patient follow-up phase, it's important that we talk about how we can get through closeout analysis quickly as well, because obviously it's crucial once that all the data is in, but we need to make sure that it's clean, monitored, and then submitted accordingly. So this is just kind of walking us through your clean patient tracking workflow. That realistically, you should be working with your appropriate vendors and parties at the beginning and kind of setting this in stone of how this is going to occur throughout the study. So we can kind of move past the orange and initial red phases, whereas this is talking about how we get through enrollment. And we're then moving into how we make sure that the data is cleaned come those particular milestones for either interim analysis or final database lock. So ensuring that you have complete oversight of your data management and monitor review. Your medical coding is happening in real time or close to real time. Any lab association with the study is being uploaded and reconciled appropriately. Any de-identification is then happening from an imaging perspective throughout the study and not at the end. And then obviously moving through final STV, getting your investigators trained and signed off, getting that data locked, and then moving through any either medical review throughout the duration of the study or at the end, and then you get into your biostatistical work. But it's really important that we move through that seamlessly throughout your teams. And then here we're just talking about how crucial it is to bring your biostats and data management teams into your operational working and setup as soon as possible. It's really important to integrate them when you're getting that EDC database up and running. That way they can ensure that that initial design is going to be compatible to their SAP, compatible to their shells, and then that constant configuration, constant data analysis throughout the duration of the study operational period, and not waiting to the end. That way, anything that comes out of those final data sets is just run through the programming, goes from SDTM to ATOM to your TLF outputs, and you're ready to go from a submission perspective.
Okay, just wrapping up here, we just want to highlight that, as we noted before, Fusion can be that connected hub for all your study data. All of the different modules are available via a single logon, and we have those supporting services and flexibility in the modules, how you're going to approach your study, whether it's just a few modules or really getting the benefit of that full unified platform. And along with that, of course, that includes a real-time reporting. And as I noted briefly, just those supporting services such as biostats, as Spencer had mentioned earlier. It's really, as we noted all along, getting the team to really come together and really focusing on that steady success. And that's something that we really are committed to here at Axiom. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and looking forward to our Q&A. As always, if you'd like to discuss more with us, please come and visit our booth, and we're happy to set up a session from there. Thanks,
everyone.